I can do. How's life treating you, my friend?
It's good. It's not raining in Ireland, and Dublin is, crisp to walk through. So yeah, feeling good.
I love it. I've got to get a Guinness in me to start going for the day. And now here we are. We get OpenAI and GTM on the show. Look, I appreciate the time. I think that GTM is probably one of the most underserved topics on the internet right now. And this engineering that's come together of like, how can we go to market quickly and at speed? You do it incredibly well. And I want to start with a little intro background. So walk me through it for the stream. Who are you? Give us a little bit of context on you.
Okay, and thanks so much for having me on. By the way, it's a great opportunity to, and I think it's my first, definitely my first live stream. So I hope I do you justice. So who am I? Yeah, Colm Roach. My married name is Colm Lee-Roche. You've interviewed my wife Becky before. We both work in AI just recently, and who am I? So, dad, two kids, a boy and a girl, first and foremost, and a dad who works in tech, probably better described as that. And
What does that look
what
like today, a dad that works in tech? Is it with the gilets? Have you got the Laura Piana like the billionaires do, like all those billionaires in tech? Or is it very much like the t-shirt and jeans vibe still?
I'm on the, I think there's definitely a spectrum, and I'm definitely on the like possibly wearing a t-shirt with stains on it.
Yep.
So I'm not one of those, hipster dads who's got the latest, anorak on. So I'm firmly in that camp. But yeah, I'm definitely family oriented, working in tech and trying to juggle both at the moment. My wife and I are both juggling at the moment, but it's what we asked for, and we really enjoy it. So yeah, why we're speaking today, I've worked in tech for the last 10, 11 years, maybe 12 years now. And I've worked in various roles, and a lot of those roles were in startups and scale ups. And something that appealed to me in speaking to you was the opportunity to possibly demystify how someone can work in tech, first and foremost, but also kind of answer any elements of curiosity online about how to work in a company such as OpenAI. There isn't a playbook as such, but I definitely have kind of my own lived experience of juggling skills, experience, kind of juggling both of those elements together in order to actually deliver in a GTM motion. So yeah, I don't know if I even
I'm
answered your
ready.
question.
I have so many questions. I've been looking forward
Okay.
to this conversation ever since we first spoke. Flowers where flowers are due. Becky, your wife, is one of the most incredible talent teams, part of the
Yes.
talent team that I've ever met in my life. The thinking that she brings to the table when it comes to talent is incredible. I think she's definitely a psychologist in a past life.
Thank you. And yes, yeah. And I take full credit for that, although I shouldn't. But yeah, a lot of the reason actually I'm in tech in the first place is thanks to my wife.
Walk me
We
through the journey a little bit. Like from what I heard, it's real estate, recruitment, and then kind of playing in tech a little bit with HubSpot, and then Tinder and OpenAI. Like what a journey.
Yeah, it's crazy when I look back now at the last decade, and I can definitely I won't just chronologically walk you through it because I don't think your listeners will actually pay too much attention to the step by step. However, I do want to call out that the last 10 or so years, I struggle to even call my career a career in
Mm.
tech because I've worn so many different hats and done so many different roles in possibly so many different contexts in tech. I would say I definitely have a career in tech, but it's not tied to a role per se. So to unpack that a little bit, I started out, yes, in real estate. I studied property economics. So another way of looking at that was like commercial valuations. So going in or not, well, physically or virtually, yeah, valuing office buildings. And did I necessarily want to work in real estate at the time? No. Was I motivated by money at the time, being young and hungry to succeed? Yes. So I studied property economics. The recession happened a year before I graduated, and that took me to go where property was booming, and that was in India. So I actually moved to New Delhi, and I worked in New Delhi for just under 4 months, in kind of how do you describe it, like a graduate placement perspective. Working Monday through Sunday, 9 to 9, and got a flavor for what it's like to work in a different country, different culture. And do I have anything romantic to say about like that experience and how that like skyrocketed my career in tech? Not necessarily. However, I do think that, and this is something that probably comes up quite a bit in your show, putting yourself into scenarios where you are, from the outset uncomfortable, and the guardrails do not exist, and there's very little.
I completely agree. I think that India, having spent a year there, you develop this level of agency because everyone is moving at incredible speed and it is a dog eat dog world, and sort of refines the character and adds a little bit of gristle to you over the years. You sort of you build a thick skin with that country very quickly.
Totally.
And I think that pays dividends throughout a career, throughout life, throughout work, whatever it might be. And it lives with you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. And again, I say this knowing that people might think, oh, it's the J1 experience that changed you. Not necessarily, but it absolutely shaped how I bring myself to work. And an incredible experience overall. But I did come back to Dublin, and I knew, actually, that's in and around when I met my wife Becky. And Becky had been working in recruitment at the time. She was an agency recruiter, and she was actually an agency recruiter for IT roles. And I knew she was very successful. I could tell straight away that she was a salesperson through and through. And the only job that would pay, decently at the time, that there was lots of, was an agency recruiter. And Becky put me in touch with someone, and before I knew it, I was an agency recruiter. I did that for a year and a half, short amount of time, because I can't even blame that it was tech, because it wasn't. So it was very much a year and a half in the corporate world. And what it taught me was a really fundamental skill in, business development. I learned how to sit at a desk, do phone calls in a room full of other people listening to you doing the phone call. And I sharpened that skill of building relationships over the phone. And the reason I'm kind of focusing on that is because that's ultimately the skill that got me to be one of the first BDRs in HubSpot when they arrived to Dublin. And that's essentially my route into tech, was using the business development skills that I learned in recruitment. And also there were sales skills there. In recruitment, I learned how to sell candidates into companies and companies to candidates. And I know Becky is an absolute pro at that. The only difference between Becky and I is that she stayed in recruitment, and I very much kind of moved into tech and, iterated from there. So where that took me then was HubSpot. I got, as a first tech company, it was HubSpot back in 2012. So it was when they were arguably a scale up in itself, breaking through the international markets. And I was generating business for their new corporate sales team. And I got to learn about inbound marketing and that whole motion as a new concept going to market.
Can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
The word motion, what does it mean to you in the context of GTM?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this. So I might even take a step back from motion and even just talk about GTM as a concept, because I've seen it nearly in every second headline on LinkedIn. And it very much is, obviously, it has its definitions. But what I've learned when I look back at my career is that I was probably in a lot of GTM motions that I didn't realize I was in.
Right.
It was just how you turned up and did your job. What I didn't realize was that GTM, I would argue that most tech companies, most SaaS companies over the last decade have had either mini GTM motions within them, or they were full-blown GTM, like I'm in at OpenAI. One again, a spectrum. One spectrum is that maybe they launch an epic launch every 2 to 3 months, and in kind of bringing that launch to market, there's a lot of GTM demands there. Or you're in an OpenAI where over the last year there's been 26, 27 epic launches.
I think we've lost count. It's just the cadence is every 2 weeks.
Exactly. Yeah. No. And literally is. And some of these launches would be year-defining launches for other companies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to answer your question around motions and GTM, I truly believe it is And again, not to kind of make this a lot more dramatic and romanticized than it should be, but I think a GTM motion is where a collective group of people who have a really strong balance of uh, top tier skills and the resilience and understanding of how to operate in a high velocity, ambiguous environment, come together in a collaborative way and ensure that products are launched to market, and also there's surrounding supportability to those launches. And that's one of the drivers of why I wanted to join OpenAI, was because I knew that the velocity of launches was going to be. I actually didn't realize how high that velocity would be, but yeah, I knew that it would be an environment where I could definitely lean on to some of the skills that I built up over, particularly in my days at Tinder.
I want to talk about the Tinder time for a little bit, right? We did a long stint there, right? And I think it's really honed the craft of GTM that allow you to move to OpenAI. You correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Yeah.
But when we were having this intro discussion and talking around the conversation, Tinder was where you learned the craft, like really deeply learned the craft for like what you're able to do now. What are some of the takeaways from that time in terms of GTM and how it changed over the course of your period there?
Yes. So, yeah, I absolutely agree that Tinder. I think without my experience at Tinder, I don't think I would be able to operate well at OpenAI, and that's despite being in different scale-ups before Tinder. I have
Hmm.
a lot to thank for my time at Tinder. It was an amazing environment to learn, and I had a mentorship there that unlocked a lot of doors, that I knocked on, but previously had knocked on, and the doors were always firmly closed. So I definitely have a mentor there to thank. I'll actually name him Aaron Shu. He's definitely someone that I really value. But at Tinder, as you know, obviously it's the most well-known dating app that there is.
What's
Um,
hilarious is that while you were there, I was probably using the app, and so therefore your Midas touch on what went out, I was probably using.
yeah, and as someone who joined Tinder without having ever used it, because my relationship had been 12 years deep. I missed the whole Tinder show. Um, yeah, as an environment, it was a highly autonomous environment, and being the app that it was, to keep users engaged, and to keep meeting their ever growing demands, in terms of the evolving relationship landscape, or the dating app landscape. And we needed to launch products very quickly. And there had already been an established launch readiness vehicle in LA at the time. And there still is to date. Um, and when I joined, what I had noticed was that a lot of the way the processes were flowing were quite archaic and almost traditional, in the sense that it was kind of traditional PMO style. So
Hmm.
project management office, a waterfall almost, like, has this been done? Has this exercise been done? Has this team been notified? Exactly. Yeah. And that absolutely serves a purpose, and it has worked for many companies. I'm sure there's elements of that in all the big companies. And actually, even in OpenAI, there's still elements of that. But what I wanted to do at Tinder was to take a step back and look at that launch readiness function, which I had thankfully had a program management role in. I had overseen the member experience org for launch readiness, which plugged into the wider readiness vehicle. And I wanted to basically strip back the Google suite, the sheets, and actually make sure that this was a vehicle that was autonomous, that it was complementary to a remote first kind of company, because at the time I was in a remote role, and also kind of didn't depend on people being in the same time zone, for example.
Hmm.
That when Viraj woke up, he could very much know what he needed to do, know what he needed to give feedback to, and make sure that he could contribute while juggling his core responsibilities. So at Tinder, I was able to lean into different tools, and I used a lot of ChatGPT actually at the time, which obviously created a pathway for me to work at OpenAI. But I used a lot of tools, some of which were AI, a lot of it were just basic project management tools like Monday.com. And I automated the whole readiness experience for various working groups and all teams at Tinder, which included engineering, product, analytics, and design. And we oversaw some of the biggest launches that there could have been. The Digital Services Act was one of the biggest ones, where our whole application had to be reviewed and basically overhauled to meet the needs of the requirements rather of the DSA, the Digital Services Act. And that was 6 to 9 months in the making. So I basically put the launch readiness, vehicle to test up against possibly one of the most complex launches. And when I say I just proposed the vehicle and very much iterated as we worked together as a kind of a working group. And that was delivered. That was delivered quite well.
That velocity that Tinder was moving at, how does it compare to OpenAI today and like what you've experienced there?
Yeah, so it's a funny one. So OpenAI, it still baffles me how they're able to launch so quickly and so successfully.
Boggles the
When I say
mind, genuinely.
yeah, yeah, and when I say baffled, I don't mean to take assume that we're not a sophisticated motion at OpenAI, because it's absolutely very sophisticated. But when I look at what was built at Tinder and the amount of resources and team members that were behind it, the amount of team members at OpenAI is naturally quite small. GTM in OpenAI is very much its own startup. So the how I can compare OpenAI to Tinder. Tinder had a lot more resources and was able to support the high velocity of launches. At OpenAI, I would say the velocity is 10x the velocity of what Tinder was, with 10 times less resources, or runways. So a runway
How
for
do you how do you have to think about the launch philosophy then? You have to strip it back to bare bones, back down to first principles, and really just think, okay, we know that this is coming out. We know that this is the velocity that we're operating at. How do we build a vehicle that allows for this? What's the philosophy there?
Well, to be honest, so there hasn't been one really. I think there's an overarching philosophy at OpenAI anyway, that we use the term future of work quite a bit, and everyone that joins the team, or their various teams, has this onus to define, and again, not to romanticize it, but it very much is how to define what our function today will look like in 6 to 9 to 12 months, and
Wow.
what will that actually look like for the market. Because we all carry quite a big burden in that I'm working for a support function right now, for example, but we're essentially building what other companies will do themselves in a support capacity. So how to do it for launch? Admittedly, we are still early at looking at how we can improve our launches. They are looking at this, but I would say that we don't have an answer per se, but it is something that is getting attention.
That's really interesting. It's one of the things I've heard from a lot of the AI companies. It's everything is moving at such a fast pace. It's almost like you're not playing catch up, but you're just in the moment building. And it's
Yeah.
it's quite a beautiful time for that, right? Because you get to rewrite what the playbook is. And so when we look back on this moment in 10, 15 years time, I genuinely believe that they're going to study GTM at OpenAI. They're going to study GTM at all these other companies, engineering in let's look at 11 Labs as an example, right? And we're gonna have discussions around how did that cadence affect the products that were coming out, right? When we think about chat today as an example, the updates don't just elevate the product. Sometimes they work, sometimes it gets a bit funny, but it still is able to deploy to, what is it, 1 billion users now?
Yeah, yeah.
Mind boggling.
Yeah, yeah. And I think actually accepting that we won't get it right. And when I say we, I obviously mean OpenAI, but in any company, I think you can only do so much preparation when you're launching. And actually a lot of the learnings come obviously post-launch. So you launch to a beta cohort, or you launch a beta version to a cohort of people and then expand that to general launch. But we're with OpenAI, there's definitely there's much more at stake when we're launching different models, and I think that's why I'm really interested in working at OpenAI, is that I can play a very small role in building systems or building ways of work that could potentially impact vast amount of people. So I'm highly envious of the products that are being built under the hood. I'm not privy to a lot of them, but I think from a user operations perspective, I get to potentially contribute to how we can marry the amazing models and products that are launching but actually in a very human way and a human centric way. So yeah, that's one of the biggest motivators I have in working in this company, because it isn't somewhere you can just turn up on Monday and feel like you've been productive. It is very, very high complexity, fast paced, highly ambiguous, and yeah, a lot of fun.
I want to ask then, okay, two questions. One, how does someone like define a career in GTM to go and work at OpenAI? And then the second one is like, what is it really like working there?
Yeah, so number one is it's really a difficult one, because I think people are still feeling the need to upskill in academia. Like I'll put my hands up and say that I went down through the whole academia piece. I studied a bachelor's. I have two master's degrees. Not to shout that from the rooftops, but I spent a lot of time in academia to try kind of give myself the best foot forward in the interview processes. And when I look back, do I think that they stood to me in ways that I probably didn't imagine, but
Mhm.
the ways that I traditionally would have thought they would, they didn't. And obviously the AI landscape has changed what education will and may become. But I still think that there is a need to find kind of avenues to upskill in AI. And even if that is just broadly speaking from a knowledge perspective, less so on the skill side, to basically not play catch up, but to bring yourself as up to date as possible with the landscape. And it will be outdated just as soon as you get the certificate
I've got to ask then, like, how do you do it? How do you stay at, or not ahead of the curve, but just in front of it?
Yes, I actually don't think it's possible.
Well, even
And
with the tools today, even with products like,
yeah,
well, even with the AI products we have at our fingertips, just because of the rate of change.
I think it's absolutely possible to, like, I'll take prompt engineering for example. Like
Hmm.
I did a course, and I'm definitely not going to remember the name of the institute, but it was a workshop in AI operations. It was a boot camp where you very much went into the weeds on prompt engineering, and it was a really useful course. And I absolutely apply that in how I'm making recommendations to customers and how they use prompts. That being said, I know just having worked at OpenAI and knowing the product iterations that are launching, that maybe the demand for prompt engineering, maybe the product will serve a lot of that purpose in the future. So I think it's not that you don't need to put in the groundwork before to understand. I think it's absolutely valuable to do it. But I think just before going into kind of any upskilling and taking any path where it takes a commitment of time, just accepting that you will build knowledge in an area, but it may not be directly applicable, but it will absolutely serve you as a person that's possibly wanting to move into AI. Now, what I would tell anyone that's looking to move into AI or even into tech more broadly is I do think that it's important to debunk the idea that only people, and you keep me honest here, Viraj, because this is just what I sense when I'm speaking to people who are interested in working in these companies, is that only people that have a comp science background can work in these companies. And I'm living proof
That's the
that,
general sentiment. That's the
yeah,
feeling on the ground, and the reality
I
is
do
not that.
not have a computer science background, nor do I have the ability to code in Python. Do I understand it now? Thankfully, working in a lot of different environments, absolutely. But I didn't have that background, and I think it's important to call out, because I think if people think that that's the route in, they're doing themselves a disservice, and they might pick up courses that they may not actually want to study or have an affinity to study. So my advice to anyone that's looking to get into tech or even AI is that there are a lot of courses out there, but actually just reach out to people on LinkedIn that work in these companies. I know that's quite obvious, but people want to help people, and I've definitely responded to quite a bit of messages just asked from former colleagues, friends, and people I don't know about how to get into or how to start out, a learning path that could
Where
lead them.
where are you going right now? Is it very much like your prompt engineering with OpenAI? Is it that there are like uh certain resources that you use specifically, or like is it just like you're deep in clay right now?
Yeah, no, so no, not deep in clay, but I absolutely appreciate what clay have done. No, so what I would do, I do a lot of learning, obviously within ChatGPT. I think it's an amazing tool just to like surface, really hyper focused learning paths, I would quite frequently use advanced voice and I would speak to, you know,
Oh,
ChatGPT. It's amazing.
it's
And
so good.
it's actually, it's so crazy that, so I work in a hybrid, I'm kind of jumping around here, Raj, sorry, but I work in a hybrid model at the moment where I work from home sometimes and then I work in the office. And my biggest challenge right now is that I'm so used to at home speaking to my monitors with ChatGPT and having conversations, you know, back and forth about all my thoughts and then how I could possibly propose a solution. But then when I'm in the office, I don't feel comfortable, you know, doing that same thing. And I actually just realized that, like, and I asked myself, are we going to get to a place where, you know, people are having conversations to ChatGPT? We might. But that's what I do, Raj. Like I would use a lot of ChatGPT to direct my self learning. I think that's a hat that I firmly wear. But also, Anthropic recently launched something in partnership with the Irish education system around AI fluency, and it's an amazing course, and it's free, and you get a certificate of completion. So whenever I have graduates reaching out to me, or peers that are looking to break into AI, and maybe they've worked in some of the biggest SaaS companies, I hand them this course because it is such an amazing piece of coursework to get, and it is very reflective of the things that matters most when you're using AI and how to do it in a safe way. So full credit to Anthropic for developing that course. I can actually share you that course at the end too.
We'll add it to the list of resources at the end of the show.
Yes, great. So that's where I would go. And I don't mean to be too pessimistic in saying that, yes, this does get outdated, but that's a great way. I would say focus on foundations and foundational knowledge first, and then obviously using the different apps or models. And then secondary to that, getting the experience. So working in startups is something that has served me incredibly well. It has allowed me to be comfortable in highly ambiguous situations. And I think that really stands to me. Like the most skilled person in the room is only as useful if they're able to cope with the demands of that environment. And I truly believe that. So I would say what I said first is the foundational knowledge piece, and then marry that with experience. Maybe it's not in an AI company, but it's in a startup, for example.
Love it. Tell me before we let you go, I've got a couple more questions. One, what's it like working at probably the
Yes.
most interesting company on the planet right now?
Yeah, and I feel so fortunate to be even able to speak to you, having like working in OpenAI. I truly believe that. It's amazing. Like it's hard work, but it's really challenging work. And I think I am someone who I need a lot of stimulation with regards to the work that I do, and it very much delivers that. Is it probably as sexy as people think it might be? You know, probably not. Like there is work involved, and there's some heavy lifting to do. But it's great. I sometimes I'm there's things coming down the line that it blows my mind. There's lunch and learns that happen in the office that blow my mind. And I can normally comprehend a lot of the concepts that are shared, but there are concepts that are shared where I really have to take a second look at the demo and I really have to think, okay, so what? You know, that is absolutely incredible. I can't wait to. There's not enough time for me to use this stuff. That's my take, and I'm working for the company that delivers it. So it's incredibly exciting, very exciting.
Love it. Look, before we let you go, I've got one last question. We asked Becky the same question. And it was right at the end of the interview that we did with her. It was very much focused on like, how are you raising your kids right now?
Yeah. Oh, Becky definitely had a much better answer than I probably would give. Um, because I sometimes I feel like my kids raise me, which is crazy. Um, I don't think it's as deliberate as I would take it in approach to, you know, work. I think I'm very conscientious of their experience and their understanding. I think the quickest thing that I do is I try to teach while I'm saying something, which is hard because you have to almost second guess what you're saying and what that could mean. And then you think you're saying the right thing, and then Instagram will tell you later in the day that what you said actually has the wrong effect. You know, so I think to answer your question without going over, I'm very mindful of how I show up with the kids, and it is a huge challenge being mindful when you're working for an OpenAI or an 11 Labs. So I think Becky and I try to lean on each other. You know, sometimes I'll have late meetings, sometimes she will. And we just try to divide and conquer, like who is the mindful parent at this given time, who can actually dedicate their full attention. And I think that's I think it for us, attention is the biggest currency with regards to how we parent and show up. So do we do a perfect job at it? Definitely not, but we try.
Well, look, you're probably the two parents that I know that are probably the most well positioned individuals to teach their kids about how to use technology in the next decade of their lives, maybe 2 decades of their lives. We appreciate you coming on the show. I'm looking forward to doing it again. Thanks so much for the time.
You're a gent. Thank you so much.